spring fever, I have my pastel colored goggles on. So starting with this video, I'm going to jump into some of my favorite spring and summer recipes, move on from that cozy winter food and right into the fun stuff. Today I'm going to show you how to make strawberry shortcakes. These are Drop-Biscuit style. This was the style that I grew up with. In fact, my mom's go-to recipe is the recipe on the Bisquick box, and I have absolutely no judgments there. It's still my favorite recipe for shortcakes, but I don't often have Bisquick on hand, so I like to have a recipe on standby that uses pantry staples. I know a lot of times chefs say, oh, it's pantry staples, and then they pull out these crazy ingredients that no one is going to have on hand, but I promise this is all stuff that you most likely have. So let's make some shortcakes. The whole process is really going to happen in just one large bowl. So to start off, I'm going to mix all of my dry ingredients. That's 2 cups flour, 2 teaspoons baking powder, a 1/4 cup of sugar, and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I know I said that I was mixing my dry ingredients, but sugar's technically not a dry ingredient, it's technically a wet ingredient, but for the sake of this recipe, it's going in with the dry. On standby, I'm going to have a cup of milk mixed with 1/2 to a teaspoon of vanilla extract. Struggling with the vanilla. I'm going to set that aside because first I need to mix in my butter. Really important thing about biscuits, I'm sure you've heard this before, but when you're working with biscuits or pie crust or any sort of pastry, you want your butter to be very cold. That way as the butter melts in the oven, it's going to form steam pockets and it's going to make everything nice and light and fluffy. If you mix in your butter soft or melted, you're going to get a tougher dough. You can blend in the butter using a pastry cutter, your fingers, a food processor. Today, to make things just kind of easier, I'm going to actually grate the butter in. So it's a stick of unsalted butter. I'm just going to grate this right over the bowl. Careful not to grate your fingers. Oh my gosh, that's so much butter. Before I mix in my wet ingredients, I'm just going to toss this butter in the flour. You don't have to go crazy here because you don't want to melt the butter, but you do want to coat it in the flour. It'll help it just kind of stay in clumps rather than melting into your dough. In goes the wet stuff. This is going to get mixed just until you get a wet batter. So what you're left with is kind of a funny texture. You could think of it as a really dry cake batter or really wet biscuit batter. Whatever visual helps you picture this here. But you don't have to worry that this is really moist. We're not going to be rolling this out. Like I said, we're just going to be doing this drop biscuit style. We're literally going to take globs of this, drop it on a cookie sheet, and bake it freeform style. My oven is preheating to 425. The way I'm going to do this is with a 1/3 cup measure. I'm just going to fill this and scoop it out onto my cookie sheet. Depending on what size you do, you're going to get a different number. I'm probably going to get about 6 with the 1/3 cup. You could do this with a ice cream scoop. If you have one of those, I don't have a big ice cream scoop, so I'm going to use my measuring cup here, and it works just fine. Just take my measuring cup, filling it up, and turning it out onto my cookie sheet. If you're a little nitpicky, you can kind of nudge these into a more uniform shape. I like the rustic look myself, but you don't want them too haphazard, they won't bake evenly. So I got seven out of this. I always get a different number because I always use a different size scoop. Like I said, you can adjust that. You just need to bake it more or less if you make them larger or smaller. These are going to go into the oven. It's at 425. I'm going to check them around the 8-minute mark. Once they start browning on the outside, you want to take them out. They'll also be golden brown on the bottom. You don't want to overcook these because they'll dry out. So check them around the 8-minute mark. They shouldn't take any longer than 10 or 12 minutes. I have my night wine, I have my PJs on, and I'm ready for some dessert. I'm going to show you how I like to eat these. Take the shortcake of your choosing. So I like to break it up into my bowl. This part, don't knock this until you try it. This is my favorite part. A little bit of milk. And then as this sits and soaks up the milk, it makes it really light and refreshing. Don't knock it until you try it. My husband had never seen anyone eat shortcake this way until he married me, and he's a believer. Strawberries, because it would not be strawberry shortcake without those. If your strawberries are not great, the helpful tip is to, after you've chopped them up, toss them with a couple tablespoons of sugar. The sugar is going to start drawing all the juice out of the strawberry. It's going to sweeten everything. It's going to break them down a little bit. Some chemical reaction I'm not even going to pretend to understand. Finally, whipped cream, because with 12 tablespoons of butter, this dessert does not already have enough cream in it. I'm going to get some strawberry, some cake, some whipped cream, some milk. They're so buttery and fluffy and moist. They don't look as elegant as your traditional strawberry shortcake. These aren't going to win you any awards, but I just think it's a much simpler alternative than rolling it out, cutting it, that whole mess. I will probably at some point this spring or summer show a recipe for actual strawberry shortcakes. So I'm going to go take my wine and my delicious shortcake. It may be 20 degrees outside, but I'm going to eat like it's the summer. Well, everyone, stay warm. I hope you try this recipe. The written instructions are in the video description below. If you do make this, let me know how it turns out in the comments, and while you're down there, like and subscribe, and check back for more recipes to come. Bye.